MMA fighters are tough, and they're emotionally volatile, especially when the adrenaline flows, so it's only natural that out-of-the-octagon brawls will occur. Some stop with verbal altercation, but some accelerate to full-blown physical violence, and most of them are crazy. One of the most infamous brawls was between Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier at UFC 178.
Jon Jones, get together, I'm waiting for you!
And on July 29th, they will meet once again.
It erupted during a media day event on August 4, 2014. The two fighters engaged in a heated verbal argument. This went on for a while. Then, it escalated into a physical altercation. Cormier shoved Jones. Jones responded with a punch, and at that moment, it was on. The full-on brawl spilled out of the room and into the hallway. The MMA community condemned the altercation. Both fighters ended up taking huge amounts of flack for their actions and lack of self-control. The Nevada State Athletic Commission, NSAC, launched an investigation into the incident. Ultimately, both fighters were fined. Jones had to cough up $50,000, and Cormier was fined $9,000. The brawl did not have a significant impact on either fighter's career. Both went on to achieve great success in the sport. However, it did serve as a black mark on their records, and it tarnished their reputations to some extent. Jones and Cormier continued to feud in the years that followed. There was a highly anticipated rematch at UFC 214 in 2017, which Jones won by knockout. Then, there's the infamous brawl that erupted during Strikeforce Nashville on April 17, 2010. This was a shocker, even by MMA standards. The incident occurred during a post-fight interview between Jake Shields and Dan Henderson. A group of fighters from the Cesar Gracie camp entered the cage and confronted Henderson's team. The confrontation turned violent in a flash. Punches were thrown, kicks were landed, both sides gave as much as they had and took as much as they gave. The incident was sparked when Shields called out UFC middleweight champion Anderson Silva during his post-fight interview. This prompted Henderson, who was a former training partner of Shields, to step in and confront him. As Henderson was speaking, members of the Cesar Gracie camp entered the cage. There was shouting, and then some shoving, and then all hell broke loose. The Athletic Commission imposed fines and suspensions on several fighters. This included Shields and Jason Miller. Miller was a member of the Cesar Gracie camp. The incident had a significant impact on the fighters' careers. Both Shields and Miller received suspensions. It kept them out of action for several months. Many in the fighting community called for stricter regulations and harsher punishments for such behavior. The fighters involved in the brawl did not immediately resolve their beef. Tensions remained high between the two camps for several years. However, over time, many of the fighters involved have put their differences aside. They all say they've moved on from the incident. Shields even went on to join the Cesar Gracie camp and train alongside the fighters he had previously brawled with. Even the most heated rivalries can eventually be resolved. Go figure. The out-of-the-octagon brawl involving Lee Murray and Tito Ortiz is one of the most notorious incidents in MMA history.
I'm gonna be in the back of his head until he gets in here and tries to shut me up, if that's what you think you can do.
That win, him calling out Tito.
The altercation reportedly occurred in a London nightclub in 2002. Murray, a former MMA fighter, allegedly knocked out Ortiz.
Lee Murray ducked out of the way of every punch and returned fire through about a 5-punch combination, and every single punch landed.
Lee put him to sleep. He was sleeping before he hit the floor.
Ortiz was then the UFC light heavyweight champion. The details of the incident are somewhat unclear, but it is believed that the altercation began over a dispute involving Ortiz's girlfriend. The altercation happened outside of the official UFC purview, so no action was taken against the fighter. But both fighters' careers were affected. Ortiz suffered a broken facial bone. Murray went on a crime spree and eventually fled to Morocco. He was eventually arrested there and convicted for his role in a high-profile robbery. The fighting community was divided in its response to the incident. Some condemned Murray's alleged action. Others expressed sympathy for his situation. Ortiz went on to have a successful career in MMA, retiring in 2019. Then, how about the beef between the Diaz brothers and Khabib Nurmagomedov at a World Series of Fighting event in Las Vegas in 2015? The incident reportedly began when Khabib and Nate Diaz exchanged words at the event. Sparks flew, and the situation quickly escalated into a physical altercation. Both teams were involved in the brawl. There were the obligatory punches and a couple of kicks, and everybody got involved. The Diaz brothers were already known for their brash personalities and controversial behavior. They've been involved in several incidents outside of the Octagon. Khabib has since retired from MMA with an undefeated record. The beef between the fighters was never fully resolved. Tensions between the Diaz brothers and Khabib continued to simmer for several years. In 2019, Nate Diaz expressed interest in fighting Khabib in a social media post. Khabib responded positively to the idea, and then there was the time members of Tank Abbott's team and UFC veteran Patrick Smith got into it in an elevator. Abbott's team confronted Smith over comments he had made about Abbott's fighting skills. There was trash talk, the real talk, then it turned physical, with punches and kicks being thrown by both sides. The beef between Abbott's team and Smith was never fully resolved. Tensions continued to simmer between the two sides for years. This is a funny one, about an arrogant guy getting his comeuppance. In 1988, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu legend Rickson Gracie and Brazilian top team member Hugo Duarte bumped heads. The incident was sparked when Duarte approached Gracie and challenged him to a fight. Just like that, on a beach, on holiday, all chill. Gracie initially declined. Then Duarte insulted Gracie's family. Well, the rest, as they say, was history. Gracie came out on top. The beef between Gracie and Duarte was eventually resolved. According to reports, the two men made amends several years after the incident. Gracie went on to become one of the most respected figures in the MMA community. What happens in the Octagon can happen anywhere. In 2014, MMA veteran Don Fry was involved in a brawl in a hotel lobby. The incident reportedly began when Fry was approached by a stranger. The man made insulting comments about his fighting skill. Fry lost it and pushed the guy. The stranger then punched Fry and knocked him out cold. Former UFC fighter Roger Huerta once knocked a man out for punching a woman. It happened in 2010 when Huerta saw a guy physically assaulting a woman. As any gentleman barbarian would do, Huerta intervened to stop the attack. The guy clearly didn't know who Huerta was. He turned his aggression towards Huerta. Game over. This is a great example of using one's fighting skills for the greater good. In 2006, Nick Diaz and Joe Riggs got into it at a hospital.
Just generally didn't like the guy, and he generally didn't like me. But after the fight, it's gone.
Talk about preparing for the worst before you even throw a punch. It happened after their scheduled fight at UFC 57.
Decision, Joe Diaz.
The altercation reportedly began when Riggs insulted Diaz in the hospital's lobby. Words were spoken and punches were thrown. Both men suffered injuries and required medical attention. Talk about being in the right place at the right time. The Nevada State Athletic Commission took disciplinary action against both Diaz and Riggs. Both were suspended for their roles in the brawl. Diaz received a longer suspension due to his involvement in other controversial incidents. This included his infamous post-fight interview at UFC 143. The beef between Diaz and Riggs was eventually resolved. I don't even want to begin to state the takeaways from these fights outside the Octagon. We'll leave that for you to figure out. In the meantime, we're out of here. Catch you in the next video.